What if one day you collapsed, and the only one left to save your life wasn't a human, but a dog? This is the story of an old woman everyone forgot, except her dog, who never did. It was a cold winter morning in a quiet town in America, where snow covered the ground like a white blanket. People stayed inside their warm homes, but at the end of one street, there was a small old wooden house that everyone seemed to forget. In that house lived Margaret Wilson, an 82-year-old woman. She had no one, no son, no daughter, no friends. No one at all except a dog. His name was Rusty. Rusty was not just a pet, he was her support, her companion, and her reason to wake up every morning. Margaret would often sit by the window in her old chair, gently stroking Rusty's head and say, "It seems like no one is coming today either." Rusty would wag his tail and rest his head on her lap as if saying, "I am here, and that is enough." Every morning, despite her weak legs, Margaret would take Rusty out for a walk. People passed by, some looked, but most ignored her. To them, she was just another old woman slowly fading away, but to Rusty, she was his entire world. One day, the winter became harsher, and the news kept warning people to stay indoors because of a severe snowstorm. But that morning, Margaret did not come out of her room. Rusty kept waiting, then he nudged her hand, but there was no response. He barked softly, but there was only silence. Margaret was lying on the floor unconscious, and her breathing had become very weak. Rusty panicked. He ran to the door and barked loudly, but no one could hear him. The house kept getting colder and time was passing. Rusty kept going back to Margaret and then running to the door. He did not understand what to do, but he refused to give up. Finally, Rusty escaped through a broken part of the backyard fence and ran into the snow. He kept running, even as his paws froze and the cold wind cut through him, but he did not stop. He reached a nearby house and started barking loudly. A man came outside. At first he was annoyed, but then he realized something was wrong. The dog was not leaving. He kept barking, running a few steps ahead and coming back as if asking him to follow. The man put on his jacket and followed Rusty. They walked through the snow until they reached Margaret's house. When the man went inside, what he saw changed everything. Margaret was lying unconscious and barely breathing. He immediately called 911, and within minutes an ambulance arrived. Rusty sat quietly in a corner, watching everything, his eyes filled with love. At the hospital, doctors said if she had arrived just 30 minutes later, she would not have survived. A few days later, Margaret slowly opened her eyes, and the first thing she saw was Rusty sitting beside her bed, waiting just like always. Tears rolled down her face as she softly said, "You saved me, didn't you?" Rusty wagged his tail as if saying, "Yes, because you're mine." After that, everything changed. The story spread across the area, and she was no longer the forgotten old woman. People started visiting, her neighbors brought food, and children came to meet Rusty. After many years, life returned to that house. One evening, as the sun set behind the snowy hills, Margaret sat in her chair with Rusty lying beside her. But this time the house was not silent. There was laughter, warmth, and life. She looked at Rusty and smiled and said, "You are not just a dog, you are my miracle." Rusty closed his eyes peacefully because he knew he had done his job. Sometimes the one who saves your life does not speak your language,